In the midst of World War II's chaos, a quiet miracle unfolded within the barbed wire confines of American prisoner of war camps, where German soldiers, hardened by battle and shaped by Nazi propaganda, encountered an unexpected gift: the ability to send and receive letters from home. These men, who arrived weary from perilous Atlantic crossings, carried deep-seated distrust, expecting cruelty from their captors. Instead, they found themselves in camps with conditions far surpassing their grim anticipations: clean barracks, adequate food, and, most astonishingly, the freedom to communicate with their families through censored letters facilitated by the International Red Cross. This privilege, unimaginable in the rigid hierarchy of their former lives, became a lifeline that reshaped their identities, softened their hostility, and revealed a humanity that transcended the enmity of war. The letters, traveling a complex route through neutral nations like Switzerland and Sweden, carried not just words but hope, pain, and the fragile threads of connection to a world beyond captivity. This act of writing and receiving mail did more than sustain morale. It challenged propaganda, fostered community, and left a lasting legacy that redefined how these men viewed their captors and their own humanity. The journey of these letters began with skepticism. Conditioned by years of Nazi rhetoric painting Americans as ruthless, the prisoners could scarcely believe they were permitted to write home. Many suspected a trap, fearing their words would be twisted for propaganda or never reach their destinations. Yet, as the first letters were penned, carefully censored by American authorities and routed through the meticulous systems of the Red Cross, a fragile trust emerged. The process was arduous. Letters took weeks, sometimes months, to traverse. War-torn continents, passing through neutral postal systems before reaching families in Germany's bombed-out cities. The replies, when they arrived, were equally slow, often bearing news that was both a balm and a burden: a wife's survival, a child's growth, or the devastating loss of a loved one. For men stripped of agency, confined behind wire, the act of writing was transformative. It was a reclaiming of voice, a shift from soldier to human, fathers penning promises to children, sons sharing memories with mothers, brothers offering comfort across oceans. Each letter was a rebellion against the dehumanization of war, a declaration that they were more than captives. The emotional weight of these letters cannot be overstated. For prisoners isolated from the world, the arrival of a letter was a ritual of hope, a moment when the camp's monotony dissolved into anticipation. Men gathered to share news, reading aloud snippets of home life, their voices weaving a tapestry of shared longing. A single letter could spark laughter or tears, rekindling memories of peacetime or confronting prisoners with the grim realities of Germany's collapse. Then one prisoner described the moment of receiving his wife's letter as a bridge to life itself, a connection that reminded him he was still a husband, not just a number. Yet the letters also brought pain, news of bombed homes, lost relatives, or starving families forced prisoners to grapple with their powerlessness. This emotional complexity forged resilience, as men learned to balance joy with sorrow, finding purpose in the act of writing back, offering words of encouragement despite their own captivity. Beyond their emotional impact, the letters served as unintended counter-propaganda. Nazi ideology had instilled a rigid worldview, portraying the Allies as monsters and the Reich as infallible. Yet the very existence of this mail system, enabled by the enemy, challenged those lies. The humane treatment, the freedom to communicate, and the reliability of the Red Cross's system stood in stark contrast to the oppression of the Nazi regime, which often censored or destroyed personal correspondence. Prisoners began to question the narratives they had been fed. One former POW recalled, "We were told the Americans would torture us, but they gave us paper and pen, and our words reached home." This realization softened their hostility, fostering a grudging respect for their captors. The letters, though censored, became a subtle force of truth, eroding the Reich's hold on their minds and planting seeds of doubt that would bloom in the post-war years. The mail system also transformed the social fabric of the camps. In an environment where tensions could flare into violence, The shared ritual of writing and receiving letters fostered camaraderie. Prisoners exchanged stories of their families, swapped advice on crafting letters, and even helped illiterate. Comrades put their thoughts to paper. This sense of community reduced conflicts and gave the men a collective purpose. Camps that allowed regular correspondence saw lower rates of unrest, as the psychological lifeline of mail provided an outlet for frustration and despair. The act of writing became a communal act of defiance, a way to assert their humanity in the face of captivity. For some, it was a form of therapy, a way to process the trauma of war and imprisonment by articulating their hopes and fears. The legacy of these letters extended far beyond the war. For many prisoners, the correspondence shaped their post-war lives, influencing how they reintegrated into a defeated Germany. Those who had maintained contact with their families found it easier to rebuild relationships strained by years of separation. The letters also left a lasting impression of America, not as an enemy, but as a place capable of compassion. Many former POWs returned home with stories of humane treatment, sharing tales of the mail system that had sustained them. These narratives countered the lingering effects of propaganda, fostering a more nuanced view of the former enemy. Some even maintained contact with American camp staff or Red Cross workers, forging unlikely bonds that endured for decades. The psych letters, preserved by families, became historical artifacts, offering glimpses into the emotional lives of men caught in the crucible of war. The mechanics of the mail system itself were a marvel of wartime logistics. The International Red Cross, leveraging the neutrality of countries like Switzerland, ensured that letters were handled with care and impartiality. Each letter underwent rigorous censorship to prevent military secrets from being shared, yet the system was designed to preserve the personal essence of the correspondence. Prisoners were given limited paper and strict guidelines. Letters could not mention camp conditions or military matters, but within these constraints, they poured their hearts into their words. The Red Cross's role as a mediator was critical, as its reputation for neutrality reassured both prisoners and their families that the letters were genuine. This trust was essential in a war where misinformation was rampant, and it underscored the Red Cross's indispensable role in upholding humanitarian principles amid global conflict. The letters also revealed the broader human cost of war. For prisoners, writing home was a way to confront the realities of Germany's unraveling. Letters from families described air raids, food shortages, and the creeping despair of a nation on the brink of defeat. These accounts forced prisoners to grapple with their own role in the war, sparking introspection about the cause they had fought for. For some, the letters were a wake-up call, revealing the falsehoods of Nazi promises and the devastation left in their wake. This reckoning was painful but necessary, as it prepared prisoners for the challenges of returning to a shattered homeland. The letters, in this sense, were not just personal but political, offering a window into the collapse of an ideology and the resilience of those caught in its fallout. The act of writing itself was a form of empowerment. In a world where prisoners had little control, the ability to craft a letter was a small but significant act of agency. It allowed them to shape their narratives, to present themselves not as defeated soldiers, but as individuals with stories, dreams, and responsibilities. This shift was particularly profound for younger prisoners who had known only the regimentation of military life. For them, writing was a rediscovery of self, a chance to articulate who they were beyond the uniform. The letters became a canvas for their hopes, promises to rebuild, vows to reunite, dreams of a future free from war. This act of self-expression was a quiet rebellion against the dehumanizing forces of captivity and conflict. Ultimately, the letters were a testament to the enduring power of human connection. In a war defined by destruction and division, the simple act of sending a letter across continents was a radical act of hope. It bridged the divide between enemies, connected families torn apart by conflict, and reminded prisoners that they were not forgotten. The mail system, though born of necessity, became a symbol of compassion, proving that even in the darkest times, humanity could find a way to shine through. For the German POWs in American camps, these letters were more than paper. They were lifelines, carrying the weight of love, loss, and the unyielding desire to be remembered as more than just soldiers. Their legacy endures in the stories of those who wrote and received them, a reminder that even in war, the written word can heal, connect, and transform.